Things get weird, things get experimental.
If you thought vampire sex in Twilight was intense, you have not seen anything yet.
Hi, I'm Shannon Vestal.
I'm Becky Kirsch, and we're the editors of BuzzSugar.
In this week's episode of The Buzz, we're looking at 50 Shades of Grey because this book is everywhere. Becky, I know, has read all the books, so she's kind of my 50 Shades of Grey expert. So I want to know, how did this all start?
Well, first of all, I think you got to give it more than just a few chapters before you make a decision. It does take a little bit of time to get into.
All right.
So it actually started as fan fiction, and if you're not familiar with fan fiction, basically it's when fans take characters that they've come to really like and start putting them into their own stories, like Harry Potter, or in this case we have Twilight. So the author E.L. James took the, Belle and Edward and put them into a very different story, a little kinkier than what we've seen in Twilight, and eventually, once the story became so popular, she changed their names to Christian and Anastasia.
So are there any other parallels between Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey besides just the characters?
Well, I mean, there's not too many. It's not like supernatural or anything like that, but they do have the same strong, intense connection between each other and this sort of carnal attraction, and there is sort of a Jacob best friend love interest. Not really love interest actually in this one as much as in Twilight, but he is there.
And I think, as everyone knows by now, one of the biggest differences is that 50 Shades of Grey has a lot of sex, and not, as Christian would call it, vanilla sex. Things get weird, things get experimental, things get very S&M, right?
Well, I mean, I think it's actually BDSM
Sorry.
is the proper term, but if you thought vampire sex in Twilight was intense, you have not seen anything yet.
All right, well, with all the hype surrounding the sex scenes of this book, my major question is, if it wasn't in there, would the story still be compelling?
Well, I think the sex scenes is definitely the reason why so many people are picking up this book. I don't think it would have the same following without it. And this is not the great American novel. There is a lot of overused words and cheesy things like references to Anna's inner goddess, which gets a little eye-rolling after quite some time. So I don't think it would take off the same way without it.
All right, so we know that it has its shortcomings, but it has this crazy fan following, including lots of people in Hollywood. Ryan Seacrest has talked about it. Apparently John Mayer used it to hit on somebody. Kind of weird.
That's a very John Mayer thing to do.
And also, I guess Ellen DeGeneres has read from it on her show, right?
Yeah, well, let's take a look at what celebrities have been saying about it.
50 Shades of Grey. Oh, goodness.
50 Shades of Grey, that S&M book.
I'm kind of dying to read it.
I got carded when I bought 50 Shades of Grey.
I sang one of the pages of 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, my gosh.
He guides his hands across my secret garden.
I'm into it because I have to be, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm loving it.
I've seen people read this on airplanes, and I'm always like, ew.
It is crazy, wild.
Thank God there are no pictures in here.
Well, the other reason why everyone is talking about 50 Shades is that it's in the very early stages of being made into a movie. Lots of actors are already throwing their names into the ring, and just recently the writer Bret Easton Ellis said that he wanted to adapt it and he wanted to bring David Cronenberg on to direct it, which I think actually sounds like an awesome idea. So I'm kind of wondering from you, how do you think this is going to work as a movie, especially with all the sex?
I actually think it might be much better as a movie, mostly because, like I said, it's not the most compelling story on the page, but I think on screen with the right actors, you might be able to really feel the chemistry, in which case the sex scenes may not need to be as explicit if you have a stronger love story. Also, I mean, let's face it, they probably don't want an NC-17 rating, and if you're really going to stay very true to the book, you're going to have a porn movie, and I don't think that's what they're going for.
So then the other big question would be, who's going to play Christian and Anna? Do you have anyone in mind? I feel like you do.
Well, I mean, of course I do. I mean, they haven't picked anyone yet. I mean, it's still in the very early stages, but for me, I would pick Ryan Gosling. I would pick him to be the lead in any movie that I was casting, just because I think, he's a really great actor. He's very dreamy. He has that he can do the smoldering thing, and I don't know. He's also in the right age range, which is 27. I think they might actually end up making him a little bit older because it's hard to find someone in that exact age range, so we'll see.
And what about Anna?
I don't have as many ideas for her, but I think Lucy Hale might be good, who's on Pretty Little Liars. I just really like to see someone who isn't as, very exposed, who's a little more unknown.
So, final verdict, is 50 Shades of Grey worth reading?
I'm going to say yes, just because it's become such a big pop culture phenomenon. It's only going to get bigger as the movie news draws closer, and at this point, you probably have a friend that's already read it and you can borrow it from them, and you don't necessarily have to read all three. But I will say, not really for public reading, because now that everyone knows about it, they're going to judge you.
That is good advice. But let us know in the comments if you've read 50 Shades of Grey and what you think about all this movie news. I'm Shannon Vestal.
I'm Becky Kirsch, and thanks for watching The Buzz.